Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question, and they're basically asking, how do we know if we're fully recovered? I mean, what does that even mean? People always talk about you need to make sure you're fully recovered. What exactly is that? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about that. All right, guys, fully recovered would basically mean that you're fully recovered and adapted in all of the tissues that are affected by training to the point to where you are now bigger and stronger. All right, you are fully recovered from a workout. You are fully recovered from a workout when your muscles have fully recovered. They have fully adapted and improved from the training session. Your bones, all the little micro cracks have healed, your connective tissue has healed, and your peripheral nervous system has regained all of its performance. Meaning, if you cannot replicate or slightly increase your performance somewhere in a workout, you haven't fully recovered from it. It's that simple. It's that simple. Because a workout is intended to cause adaptation. It's intended to cause adaptation and improvement. Otherwise, why would you be working out? What would be the point if you weren't trying to improve something? And like I said, until you can replicate that performance, you can't increase overload. So it's the ability to improve performance just slightly. That means your 300-pound max could go up to 300.5-pound max. Something has to improve somewhere for you to is a sign of full recovery. Now, the thing we get into is that how important is full recovery between every workout? Maybe not that important, because we get into two different types of theories here. You have single factor recovery model, and you have a dual factor recovery model. Single factor, the idea is that you don't train again, or at least a given muscle group or lift or whatever, until you have fully recovered. That's where the idea of body part splits comes from. Which means until a lift or muscle or whatever is fully recovered 100%, you don't train it again. Now, that only applies to slightly more advanced lifters, because we know novice lifters, they can recover sometimes within 48 hours. They're just not able to generate workloads that are high enough to take an entire week to recover from, other than just through doing sheer excessive volume, but meaning a few exercises, a few sets of really hard work. Novice lifters are just not strong enough to generate huge inroads in their recovery. They just can't move enough tonnage per minute of training in order for it to be an issue. They're just not strong enough. So that's one reason when we do full body type training for novices, they're oftentimes 3 days a week. Why? Because as long as workloads are kept reasonable, like total volume, their workload is going to be low enough that they'll usually fully recover. And oftentimes novices can come in and increase weight once or more, sometimes every workout, for several weeks straight. All right, so they can do it sometimes for several weeks straight without a problem. That means that they are fully recovering, obviously. Now, as people get more advanced, that becomes a problem, which is one of the reasons you see heavy, medium, and light days. You see undulating periodization and things also used. All right, this is one reason undulating periodization is used, because different systems recover at different rates, and you can basically train around that by running undulating rep ranges throughout the week. So it's not even necessary in that case for full recovery to get maximum performance every workout. But as people become more advanced, they obviously either start doing split programs and giving more time between body parts, or they start using things like lighter days in between somewhere when they stay on full body type programs. More intermediate programs tend to run that way. Different ones that are out there run different intensity levels and rates of perceived exertion through the week. Why? Because you're not fully recovered, but you can still stimulate adaptation. So what we get into here, though, is the difference between single factor recovery and dual factor recovery. Now, dual factor recovery models have been found to actually produce superior results, like over, say, a 12-week or 20-week period of time. Using dual factor models will actually produce slightly superior performance and slightly superior muscle growth. Dual factor recovery says it's not necessary to recover between every workout. You can continue to train in a fatigued state. You need to accept that you're not necessarily going to be able to increase performance every workout. Now, you might do so through periodization, meaning because you're not working at maximum effort most weeks, you might ramp things up. So, for example, you might run 10 rep sets for 3 weeks, but every week you increase the volume, and at the third week you're probably near your maximum. Then you rotate to a different rep range, reduce volume, so you see a push up in recovery, then a slight back down in the workload so that you recover and adapt more, and you'll run progressive overload in 3-week blocks. But eventually, no matter how you push it, because you are pushing workloads that you're not fully recovering from, that you start looking more at things like how much daily, weekly, monthly tonnage can you produce, and you do so without concern for the short-term recovery. All right, so when you're using a model like this, you don't actually care about recovery from workout to workout. It needs to be just enough recovery to allow you to run the sort of progression you're running. But again, you need to understand you're not pushing anything to maxes when you start training like this. Again, most block periodization and linear periodization is going to work off this principle that you aren't fully recovering even week to week. Maybe every third week you're going to get some back down and you're going to get some decent recovery for the fourth week, because you've usually changed something and then reduced workload going into that next week. But you are still eating into your recovery inroads. And so a 12-week system like that, what you would actually do is push yourself beyond what you can recover from, because you accumulate fatigue and then you deload. You deload, and when it's usually programmed in that most people are going to fail to recover at that point, usually a 12-week periodization program is going to be set up to where you are overreaching the final 2 to 3 weeks, meaning you are pushing well beyond what you could even recover from on a weekly basis, meaning at the end of that week you are not recovered, and then you are pushing a little more. And the idea behind that is that when you finally do a deload, that's when you recover. All right, when you do planned overreaching in a dual factor model, you are only recovering partially between workouts, and you just keep ramping up and eating into your recovery inroads till you get close to overtraining syndrome. Then you back way off. And when I mean back way off, you back off insanely. Deloads are oftentimes done with 50% of the weight you were previously using, and you start cutting out sets. So had you been doing 3 sets of 8 with 300 pounds, you would cut down to 2 sets of 8 with 150 pounds, and you might deload for an entire week. That's the norm. And during that week, you fully recover from the 12 weeks of accumulated fatigue, and particularly that final block. You recover from it, and when you finally recover, you adapt to all of that previous training stimulus. And actually what happens when you program this correctly, you see most of the adaptation in that 13th week where you deload. That's where you get the most performance gains, because then you fully recover, and when you come back from that deload week, you will be stronger than you have ever been. And when I say stronger, you should be stronger on all your performance elements. People will say, well, I don't care about strength, I care about muscle. Well, if your 10 rep max goes up, you are bigger. Meaning, if you can turn being able to do 300 pounds for 10 reps into 315 pounds for 10 reps on an exercise, that's muscle growth. You're able to stimulate more workload. It is workload. It is work done that stimulates a muscle to grow. Is it not? And that's generally understood. Muscles respond to work. You can now subject them to more work. That will achieve muscle growth. You can't separate the two there. So when people talk about being fully recovered, what we need to understand is that full recovery workout to workout, you get away with that with high frequency as a novice, but as you become an intermediate and up, it's arguable that single factor models of being fully recovered in every workout is actually the best. It might give you the best short-term gains, meaning over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, but when you push it out for 12 weeks or for 6 months or whatever, you're actually going to find that planned overreaching will usually give you superior long-term results using the dual factor recovery model, because you use certain weeks to play catch up. And some people do this in 3-week blocks and then every 4th week deload. I mean, like Wendler 531, as you overreach basically on the 3rd week, and then you deload every 4th. Now, we could argue that's excessive, but it works. The whole point is, though, is that what we need to look at is that outside the novice phase, full recovery from workout to workout may not actually be necessary. It is that you must eventually fully recover. In order to completely adapt to any given workload and training, you will eventually need to fully recover. But it's not necessarily something that you have to do in the short term, but just be aware that in the short term, failure to fully recover will mean you're going to have workouts in which you are not going to be able to perform optimally. But you know what? Who cares? Performing optimally needs to be left to a competitive environment. You're not in the gym to perform optimally in a workout. You're in the gym to build adaptation, to either get bigger, to get stronger, to get faster. You're there to improve. You're not there to impress. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.